Week 1 rankings are finally here. We're going through every single game, breaking down every fantasy relevant player, along with my top 24 rankings at every single position, starting with the first game on the slate. Man, is it a good one. Baltimore at Kansas City, a rematch of the AFC Championship last year. Your must-starts for Baltimore are pretty obvious, right? Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry, Mark Andrews, and Zay Flowers. These guys are all locks. The one thing I'll note here is that as long as Kansas City doesn't get up big early, I think Derrick Henry can have a monster game. Even against a stingy Kansas City defense, if the game is competitive, the game is close, Derrick Henry could have his 100-plus rushing yards, potentially 2 touchdowns. And on the Kansas City side, your must-starts are obvious as well. Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, Rashee Rice, Isaiah Pacheco. Xavier Worthy gives me a little bit of pause just because we know how Kansas City can be really slow rolling out their rookie wide receivers. They like to let them learn and wait. I do have a feeling they're not going to do that with Worthy this year, especially with Hollywood Brown already banged up. If you are desperate, if you're in a deeper league, I don't mind throwing Xavier in at your flex. It is a little bit risky, but would I be shocked at all if Worthy had a 65-yard touchdown and maybe 2 receptions on the game? Absolutely not. So I'm fine starting Worthy, but in a more shallow 10, 12-team league, probably not doing it. And I know everyone's starting to get really excited about Samaje Perine. Well, everyone that's not a Pacheco owner at least is excited about Perine. I don't really see it. I mean, I know Perine is really involved in the passing game. He was last year with Denver, but this is a 28-year-old running back that I just don't think he's very good. I don't think he's coming in to play the McKinnon role. I think he's more of a replacement for CEH, who's now going to miss 4+ games. So you're not starting Perine. And then Hollywood Brown likely going to be out as well. All in all, I think it's going to be a high-scoring game. The game point total is 46.5, so it's going to be a fun opener of the NFL season. 2 high-powered offenses with 2 pretty good defenses. It should be very entertaining. On to the next game on a Friday night. I absolutely love this. In Brazil, 2 high-powered teams, Green Bay, Philadelphia. Your must-starts for Green Bay, Jordan Love, Josh Jacobs, Christian Watson, and Jaden Reed. I mean, the Eagles were really bad against the pass last year, allowing the 2nd most yards to wide receivers. But the Eagles do have a completely revamped secondary this year that I expect to be much better. They got Cooper DeJean, Quinyon Mitchell in the draft, and then CJ Gardner-Johnson coming over from Detroit. So their secondary should be much improved. Tucker Kraft, Luke Musgrave, the 2 tight ends. I think one of these tight ends is going to pop this year. We don't know which one, so you likely don't have to start either of these guys. So they're better left on the bench. On to Philadelphia, must-starts, Jalen Hurts, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Saquon Barkley, Dallas Goedert. You likely have to start Goedert, but I just don't feel good about him this year. He's just in a really crowded offense now with Saquon Barkley, who's going to steal targets out of the backfield as well. So Goddard's fine. You drafted him. You're likely starting him, but he doesn't get me excited this year. In this new Kellen Moore scheme, maybe they use him more. I don't think there's going to be enough volume for Goddard to be that good of a fantasy contributor at the tight end position. Saquon Barkley, on the other hand, Green Bay has struggled against the run in previous years. They've allowed 4.4 yards per carry last year, which ranked 23rd. They have bolstered their defense. They have bolstered their linebacking core, but this is week 1. They have a lot of rookies as well on defense. I do think Saquon has a big game on his new team, similar to my expectations with Derrick Henry. All right, to the next game, Pittsburgh at Atlanta. You're starting George Pickens and Najee Harris, and I don't think anyone else. If you want to throw Warren in the flex, it just offers some risk because we know he's coming off that hamstring injury. We don't know if Pittsburgh's going to be smart with them, going to have him on a snap count. So he makes me a little bit nervous. I might pivot based on the information we get in the next couple days, or if you just have a clear-cut better option. If you're desperate, you can start Pat Freiermuth at tight end. He's another guy not super excited about. I know Arthur Smith likes to utilize the tight end, but I just need to see it first. So I'd rather not start him, but if you absolutely have to, then go for it. This offense in Pittsburgh could be a disaster again with new offensive coordinator Arthur Smith. I don't really know what it's going to look like. I think it's just going to be very run-heavy, and it's going to be on a Steelers team that just wants to play good defense, run the football. So who knows? But on the other side of the ball, I expect a very potent offense in Atlanta with the Falcons. You're starting the studs, Bijan, London, Pitts. Strong start is Kirk Cousins if you're in a super flex league, 2 QB league. Pittsburgh has allowed the 10th most rushing yards to running backs last season. So Bijan could have a field day. I know they added Patrick Queen from Baltimore to help fill that void, but I'm still super high on Robinson in week 1 and all year long. Everyone's talking about an Arthur Smith revenge game. No, this is a Bijan Robinson revenge game for what Smith did or didn't do to Bijan last year, just didn't give him the football. So I would love to just see Bijan go absolutely berserk. On to the next game, Arizona at Buffalo. This is going to be a good game. I would not be surprised if Arizona won this. The Cardinals, your must-start guys, Kyler Murray, James Conner, Marvin Harrison Jr., Trey McBride. You're leaving Trey Benson, Greg Dortch, Michael Wilson, all on your bench. But I think Arizona could come out on fire in week 1. We know the Bills have a new secondary this year. They lost Poyer, Hyde. Yes, they were older guys, but they have a lot of young talent in that secondary that could get exploited early and often. Matt Milano is injured again, potentially out for the season, so I think Trey McBride eats. I think Marvin Harrison Jr. eats. On the Bills side, you're starting Josh Allen, James Cook, Dalton Kincaid, and I think Khalil Shakir is a strong start in your flex as well. I'd probably leave Keon Coleman, the rookie, on the bench. Typically like to see how these rookies are going to be used before just throwing them into your starting lineup. Overall, I think this is going to be a pretty exciting game with a ton of good fantasy options. I put hours of work and research into these videos. All I ask is if you please can subscribe to the channel and like this video. It helps me out more than you know. But more than anything, I want to help you guys win your league. I want to connect with you guys more than me just talking to a camera lens. So leave a comment down below. Put your roster down there. Ask me any start-sit question. I respond to every single comment. I want to connect with you guys. I want to get to know you guys. So please do that for me, and I'd really appreciate it. On to the next game, Tennessee at Chicago. Your must-starts for Tennessee, Calvin Ridley, Tony Pollard. I don't mind starting Spears as well. I just don't think you start anyone else unless Hopkins somehow is out there, but he's coming off a knee injury. The Chicago secondary is actually pretty good. I think Tennessee might struggle to put up points in week 1 against an underrated Bears defense. Onto the Bears side, my must-starts are DJ Moore, Keenan Allen. I'm fine having Caleb Williams in there as I do have him ranked as a top 12 quarterback this year. Leave Rome Odunze and DeAndre Swift on your bench this week. I'm kind of worried about Swift just because of the backfield, Khalil Herbert, Roshan Johnson. I do think it's going to be kind of a three-headed monster that's not going to be great for fantasy. I love Odunze this year. I just don't know what to expect in week 1. So leave him on your bench, but be excited about him. This Bears offense just wouldn't shock me if they exploited this weak Titans secondary in week 1 and everyone is just like, this is what we expected. This is what we knew was going to happen. Tennessee secondary last year ranked 24th in fantasy points allowed to wide receivers. So yeah, I mean, that was last year, but still, I think these wide receivers have a big game. But I think DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, I mean, heck, Rome Odunze could score a touchdown this week. I think all these wide receivers are going to do really well. Leave Odunze on the bench, but if he blows up in week 1, which I wouldn't be surprised, then there you go. Plug him in for week 2. New England at Cincinnati, likely going to be a blowout for the Patriots. You're starting Ramondre Stevenson, and that is it. I don't feel good about anyone else on this team just because we don't know what to expect with Polk, Javon Baker. Is Drake May starting? Probably not week 1, but he'll be the starter probably by week 4. The Patriots are probably going to get blown out. What we can hope for is if we're a Stevenson owner, that he's on the field a ton, he's involved in the passing game. That's what we want to see. We don't want to see Antonio Gibson stealing those third downs, which I don't think we will. I'm excited about Stevenson this year and this offense. Like, week 1's going to be murky, but I think the outlook is better at least than what it was last year with new head coach, new offensive coordinator. So if you're a Patriots fan, it's probably going to be another tough year. But for a fantasy perspective, I think Polk, Baker, even Drake May could emerge later in the year. Onto the Bengals. This is tough. I mean, you're starting Joe Burrow, you're starting T. Higgins, but what is going on with Jamar Chase? Maybe by the time this video gets posted, which will be a couple days from now, maybe Chase is finally signed. Who knows? I don't know what to expect. I've faded Chase in a lot of my drafts recently because this is getting ridiculous. I do think he's going to play. I just don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if he holds out until maybe week 2. Who knows? If you're a Chase owner, hold on tight. Hopefully he signs any minute now because it is getting really frustrating. For the running backs, Zach Moss, Chase Brown. Don't love starting either guy in week 1 until we see how this backfield really shakes out. Is Zach Moss the starter? Is Chase Brown the starter? Is one guy listed as the starter, but the other guy is going to get more work? I just rather leave both guys on the bench for now. I am really excited about Joe Burrow this year. I think he's going to have a monster bounce back season. And I think Burrow and Chase are going to be really good if Chase can just get this deal done. Next game that is going to be a fun one, Houston at Indianapolis, mainly because of the two young quarterbacks, the two second-year gunslingers in CJ Stroud, Anthony Richardson going head-to-head. Let's start with the Texans first. Just start this entire offense. Like, this offense is going to be so good for fantasy this year. You're starting CJ Stroud. You're starting Nico Collins. You're starting Joe Mixon. You're starting Tank Dell. You're starting Stephon Diggs. I am really curious to see this wide receiver rotation. My prediction, Nico Collins never leaves the field. I didn't feel that way weeks ago, but seeing how they utilized him in the preseason, the contract that he got, I just really feel like he is going to be the alpha in this wide receiver room, and you're going to see a lot of rotation between Dell and Diggs. I don't feel great about Joe Mixon this year. I do think he's going to be fantasy relevant, though, just based on volume, pass down work, and red zone opportunities. He will be inefficient, but he's going to still score a lot. So you're rolling him out there. It's not the type of guy that I get excited about. I like these efficient, explosive guys, but Mixon will survive on volume, and we know volume is king in fantasy. On to the Colts, another offense that I am really excited about. I'm really curious about. We didn't see much of Anthony Richardson last year. Only had 2 really fully healthy games, but in those games, he was a fantasy football superstar. If you took a swing on him, he does have some risk, but his rushing upside will keep him safe. His floor will be safe. Regardless, you're starting Richardson, you're starting Taylor, you're starting Michael Pittman. I would make sure I have A.D. Mitchell on my bench. Stash him away to see if he emerges late. Josh Downs likely not going to play. Keep him on your bench as well. But this is going to be a fun matchup. I really do hope this offense is really good this year. I do have just some question marks. We're going to see some struggles with Anthony Richardson. As talented and good as he is, this offense will have its issues, its hiccups, but all these guys, especially Richardson and JT, are going to be really good for fantasy. Jacksonville and Miami. Starting with Jacksonville, you're starting ETN, you're starting Evan Ingram, you're starting Christian Kirk. Throw in Trevor Lawrence if you're in a 2 QB super flex league or a deeper format. I'm totally fine with that. Hopefully you drafted Brian Thomas Jr. Tuck him away on your bench for now. Stash him there and then just wait for the explosion because it's coming. Jaguars are likely going to be chasing points in this one to keep up with the potent Miami offense. So there's going to be a lot of passing. ETN's probably going to have a big game. Wouldn't be surprised if Evan Ingram and Kirk have really strong outings as well. I'm not starting Gabe Davis. I know he got the money, but I do think he's going to get phased out sooner rather than later. Brian Thomas is going to emerge into that Calvin Ridley role and have a really good role in this offense. And if Trevor Lawrence, a guy who was one of the most highly touted quarterbacks coming out of college, first overall pick, if he can put a full season together and really elevate this Jacksonville offense, then ETN is top 5 upside. Brian Thomas Jr. could be a league winner. Another concern, though, is this offensive line. Like, what does this offensive line look like? They were really bad last year. They added Mitch Morse, veteran center, is the only upgrade to this line. That's kind of concerning. Like, if this line is a train wreck that it was to close out last year, then this offense could just be a disaster and crumble. But Miami is an offense that we know is not going to crumble. It is as explosive, as potent as it comes. You're starting Tua, you're starting Hill, you're starting Waddle, you're starting Achane, and you're starting Mostert. This passing game should erupt against a secondary in Jacksonville that allowed 240 passing yards per game last year. And that also goes for the ground game as well, as Jacksonville allowed 17 rushing touchdowns in 2023. So is Miami going to put up 50, 60 points like they did on Denver? Maybe. Like, that's why I've been preaching this offseason. Just get a piece of this offense. I think Devon Achane is going to have a big year. I think everyone on this team, Achane, Waddle, Hill, are all going to do what we're expecting them to do. Carolina and New Orleans, a little more of a boring game. 41.5 point total. Nothing to really get excited about on either one of these offenses. For Carolina, you're starting Deontay Johnson, and that's really it. Xavier Legette should be on your bench. Wait for him to erupt, which I think he could, similar to Brian Thomas Jr. You're not starting Adam Thielen. You're not starting Bryce Young unless Superflex, 2 QB league. Chuba Hubbard, if you really need a running back, sure, plug him in. Not really interested in Miles Sanders. But I do think this is a Carolina offense that's going to be better under Dave Canales. They're not going to look as bad as they did last season. I mean, how much worse can you look? Like, last year was a train wreck of train wrecks. Dave Canales is a quarterback whisperer. I think he elevates this offense. We're going to have some fantasy relevant players. It might be Jonathan Brooks and Deontay Johnson could be the only two guys. I do like Leggett, though. I think he shows us his skill set, his talent. On to the Saints. I just hope this offense is better this year. I know a lot of the issues were Derek Carr was hurt the majority of last season. Their scheme, their system was as stale as it comes. But now with new offensive coordinator Clint Kubiak, I think this offense is going to be more creative. I think he's going to get his playmakers in space, a lot of yards after the catch opportunities. You're starting Chris Olave, you're starting Alvin Kamara, and you're not really starting anyone else. Maybe Rashid Shaheed breaks out with Michael Thomas gone. I'm not really excited about Shaheed. I think he's going to have those big games, but I just don't think he's going to be a consistent fantasy contributor. Kamara is likely the number 2 target on this offense, but will Derek Carr check it down as much? Because he is healthy. That is to be determined. If Alvin doesn't get a lot of receptions this year, he is going to be an absolute bust as he's at the end of his career. So start Chris Olave, though. Start Alvin Kamara, and just pray that this offense has taken the next step. Minnesota at the New York Giants. 2 more teams, 2 more offenses that don't get you too excited, and you don't really know what to expect. Starting with Minnesota, yes, you're starting Justin Jefferson. Yes, you're starting Aaron Jones. If Addison plays, you can plug him in if you're really desperate. I'd prefer to keep Addison on the bench. Obviously, you're not starting Hockenson. He's not even active. I do think that Justin Jefferson is going to have a better year than most people are expecting. I do think Sam Darnold is a better quarterback than most people are expecting. So taking Jefferson at 5th, 6th overall in round 1, I think is going to be fine. Does he limit his ceiling slightly? Sure, probably. But this is the best situation Darnold's been in his entire career, the best system with a future Hall of Fame wide receiver. So I'm not as worried about JJ as most people are. I think he'll be fine. And Jefferson's just going to be a target monster. He's going to see 12 plus targets in most likely every single game. So there is optimism there. For the Giants, you're starting Malik Neighbors and you're starting no one else. You're not starting Daniel Jones, not starting Devin Singletary. Like, get Tyrone Tracy Jr. on your bench now. I really like him this year. I do think he emerges at some point this season, but this offense doesn't offer a lot of fantasy options outside of Neighbors, who's going to be a target vacuum. But my concern is how accurate are these targets from Daniel Jones going to be? Can this offense sustain drives? Will they be in scoring position? I answer no to a lot of those questions. Las Vegas at LA is next. Starting with the Raiders, you're starting Devontae Adams. You're starting Zamir White. If you have Jacoby Myers, Brock Bowers, I'm fine throwing in Brock Bowers. Probably would leave Jacoby on your bench unless you have no one else. But can Gardner Minshew lead this offense? What is it going to look like with Devontae Adams, another year older, on an offense that I'm projecting to be a slow-paced, boring, run-heavy offense? I've been fading Adams at cost all offseason. I don't want him on my team. I could be wrong, but he saw the second most targets in the NFL last season, and he was still wide receiver 15 in fantasy points per game. Yes, that was with Aiden O'Connell, but Gardner Minshew is pretty much the same exact quarterback. For the Chargers, must-starts, I don't really have a must-start for the Chargers, unless you want to go Justin Herbert if you're in 2 QB super flex. Ladd McConkey, I love Ladd this year. I don't want to start him in week 1. You're not starting Quentin Johnston. If you're really desperate and you need a rushing touchdown, go ahead and plug in Gus Edwards. But I'd be stashing Kamani Vidal, the rookie running back for the Chargers, immediately. This is another offense, not a lot of playmakers, probably won't score a lot, probably is going to be really run heavy. I do hope McConkey and Herbert emerge as a really good duo this year. I just don't know if I see it happening right out of the gate in week 1. Denver at Seattle, the only Bronco that I'm starting is Javonte Williams. Bo Nix, you're not starting yet. I think he could become a fantasy relevant player. You can start Courtland Sutton if you want, but only if you really need someone to start, which this is week 1. So probably leaving Sutton on the bench unless you're in a deeper league. This overall Denver offense should be better this year. Everything that I've seen from Bo Nix in the preseason, he looks really poised. He looks like he could actually be a pretty solid NFL quarterback. Make sure you do stash Jaleel McLaughlin. He's one of my favorite sleepers this year. Probably not rolling him out in week 1, but get him on your roster. I think he's going to be a PPR stud in this Sean Payton offense that we know loves to throw to the running back. But for Seattle, completely different situation. I think this offense is going to surprise a lot of people this year. I wouldn't be surprised if it was a top 10 unit. You're starting DK, you're starting Kenneth Walker. I'm fine starting JSN as well. I probably wouldn't start Tyler Lockett, but if you need a flex, throw JSN in there. I think he's going to have a monster season. Might not have a huge game week 1, but if you really need a flex, I'm fine with him as an option. But this offense should be electric, high tempo, high scoring under new offensive coordinator Ryan Grubb. I think DK Metcalf is going to have a career year. I'm really interested to see what these running back snaps look like with Kenneth Walker, Zach Charbonnet. This coaching staff kind of whispered to us, kind of secretly told us all offseason that they want to use Walker in this workhorse role, but will they actually do it? Nonetheless, I hope you got a piece of this offense because they are going to be really good this year. On to Dallas and Cleveland. For the Cowboys, you're starting Dak, you're starting CeeDee Lamb, you're starting Jake Ferguson. I don't love starting either Zeke or Rico. I want to see what this backfield is going to look like. If you have to, if you're desperate, sure, go for it. I think Lamb and Ferguson are going to have monster years. I mean, we're expecting Lamb to have a big year. I think Jake Ferguson is going to be a top 5 fantasy tight end. For Cleveland, you're starting Amari Cooper, you're starting Jerome Ford, David Njoku. If you're really desperate, start Judy. If you really need a quarterback, start Deshaun Watson. 2 guys I'm pretty iffy about. They don't really get me excited. Amari does have a tough matchup against a stingy Dallas secondary that's now getting Trevon Diggs back from injury. This Dallas unit ranked 7th last year in yards allowed to opposing wide receivers. Washington at Tampa Bay. For the Commanders, your must-starts. Jaden Daniels, I think he comes out the gate scorching hot. Brian Robinson Jr., one of my biggest sleepers this year. And Terry McLaurin, who is going to get all the targets with Jahan Dotson now in Philadelphia. They don't really have anyone else on this offense. I do think this offense under Cliff Kingsbury with Jaden Daniels under center takes a huge step this year. I think they're going to be a lot better than people are expecting. I think Terry McLaurin is going to have a career year across the board. And Tampa Bay secondary, from what we saw last year, I don't know how much different it's really going to be this year, was not really good. They allowed the 4th most passing yards per game and the 3rd most completions of 20 yards in the NFL last season. So Jaden Daniels and McLaurin, don't be surprised when they both have monster week 1s. Now we're getting some better matchups. Rams at Lions. This is a rematch of the wildcard playoff game from last season. This is the highest point total, 50.5. It's going to be a really high scoring game for the Rams. You just love everyone on this offense. You're starting Kyron, you're starting Kupp, you're starting Puka. Go ahead, start Stafford if you're in 2 QB or super flex. This offense should continue to dominate. Detroit's defense allowed the 6th most passing yards and touchdowns last year, but they have completely revamped their secondary, so I don't expect that to be the case this season. They brought in Carlton Davis from the Bucks. They drafted Arnold, Ragshaw. Like this secondary, this Detroit defense as a whole is going to be a lot better. But you're starting the big dogs, the elite guys on this Rams offense, no question. Same thing with Detroit, another loaded offense. Must start Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jahmyr Gibbs, Sam Laporta. You're starting David Montgomery, Jared Goff, 2 QB, super flex. I think Amon-Ra is going to eat against a young secondary that ranked bottom 10 in yards allowed, 2 wide receivers last season. It seems like Gibbs is good to go coming off that hamstring. Will Detroit be smart with him? Is there some risk? Is he going to be on a snap count? We don't really know for sure, but you don't have an option. You're not getting cute. This is week 1. Be smart. Start your studs. I think Gibbs is going to be fine. Even if he gets a couple less touches or carries, he could still have a really good game. This Detroit offense is going to be fun this year. A lot of firepower on this team. And then our Monday night game, another good one. New York Jets at San Francisco. We get Aaron Rodgers under the Monday night lights. Pray that he stays healthy. A lot riding on a healthy Aaron Rodgers this season. Could this game be a trap though? 2 really good defenses. We're going to get all excited Monday night. We're hoping for all the fantasy points, and then it's a 13-10 game. Let's hope not. I do think there's going to be a lot of points scored. For the Jets, you're starting Garrett Wilson. You're starting Breece Hall. Don't really want to start anyone else. Mike Williams is going to be active, but he's coming off an injury. He's Mike Williams. Like, leave him on your bench. You can leave Rodgers on your bench unless you're in a deeper 2-quarterback league. Will this Jets offense be dominant this year with Rodgers under center, a revamped offensive line, weapons everywhere? I do think so. If Rodgers stays healthy, I think Breece Hall is going to have an incredible year. I think Garrett Wilson is finally going to show us what he's truly capable of. And then for San Francisco, you're starting Christian McCaffrey, even though he's coming off that calf injury, but he's going to be good to go. You're starting Debo, you're starting Kittle, you're starting Ayuk, you're starting Brock Purdy. Now, I will say, with Brandon Ayuk, hasn't really been practicing, obviously, because he just signed that contract. And now he's probably going to see a lot of Sauce Gardner. You're not benching Ayuk, but just temper your expectations. He might struggle a little bit in week 1 because he's rusty, because it's a tough matchup. But outside of that, start the studs. There's no one really else on San Francisco that you're starting. I would be stashing Jordan Mason, the running back, right now, especially if Christian happens to tweak that calf injury again. I think Jordan Mason has league-winning upside. All right, that's every single game preview, every single fantasy-relevant player for week 1. Now, next is going to be the rankings. I'm going to throw them up on the screen. Wide receiver rankings, running back rankings, quarterback and tight end, and just let them play. Enjoy. That's all I have for you guys today. Thank you so much for watching. If you got anything from this video, I'd really appreciate if you subscribe to the channel, leave a like. It goes a long way. It helps me out more than you know, and I will see you in the next one.